Om Shri Sairam, offering my most humble and loving salutations at the lotus feet of our beloved Bhagwan, Sri Satya Sai Baba. With immense gratitude, it's a pleasure to continue our discussion on Bhukti and moving on to Karma. So, as we start this evening, please join me with the prayer. O Lord, take my love and let it flow in fullness of devotion to Thee. O Lord, take my hands and let them work incessantly for Thee. O Lord, take my soul and let it be merged in one with Thee. O Lord, take my mind and thoughts and let them be in tune with Thee. O Lord, take my everything and let me be an instrument to work for Thee. Om Shri Sai Ram. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to this beautiful evening where we dive in further to explore what our Lord has taught us and whatever little we have grasped at His lotus feet. It was a great journey to explore the real essence of bhakti, how our Master made us practice life, made us live a life of meaning, of purpose. And whatever we did in life automatically became the path towards our own self discovery. This element of bhakti has a very beautiful essence of karma. And to discuss that, let me welcome my two brothers who will join me to share this journey with all of us. And let me start off with Brother Arvind. Sairam, Brother Arvind, bhai.
Sairam.
And people have already know you, but I'll do the formality of reintroducing you quickly. Brother Arvind has been a student from 1992 to 2000. He did his BSc and MSc and MBA, and then he is presently in Hyderabad working as a healthcare consultant. So, Brother Arvind, thank you very much for joining us again, and we look forward to hearing from you. Sai Ram. And let me introduce Brother Jagdish. Sai Ram, Brother
Sairam.
Jagdish.
Sairam, brother. Thanks for having me here.
Brother Jagdish has also spent 10 years at Bhagwan's Lotus Feet directly from 2000 to 2010, wherein he did his graduation in physics and his post-graduation, then PhD. And later on, he has been working in different companies. Presently, he's joining us from Germany. He works there as a senior innovation manager, corporate research and technology at Carl Zeiss. So thank you, Jagdish brother, and welcome to this
Sairam.
evening. Sai
Sairam,
Ram.
brother.
I'm so happy to have you both to continue our discussion on bhukti. And just to recap, last time we looked at various aspects of our living style, as we say, satiating the hunger of life. And we had to do so many activities in that. And it was very logical and sequential to now jump in and discuss what is action per se, because bhukti is nothing but how do we live and conduct as a meaningful life. So if you want to make our life purposeful, if you want to make our life spiritual, and whatever we want to define it as, ultimately we all are looking at a meaningful life, and that calls for an action. We have to work. This body itself is a gift of God, and as Bhagwan says, everybody who has a body is naturally in action. So it becomes very apt to discuss what is karma. And I know in Sanskrit we use a term karma and it has got so many connotations. In English, it is very simple, it's action. But let me open the floor with both of you and invite you to share how do we understand this word karma? So please, Jagdish, you can start, Arvind can join in.
Yes, brother. So the basic, as you rightly defined, from the Vedic times, the Sanskrit language itself actually evolved quite a bit. In fact, what we read of today in terms of all the Vedas and Shastras is a post-Panini Sanskrit era. Panini was the one who restructured the grammatical landscape of Sanskrit, and from there on, what we see in the chants today are actually refined Sanskrit. So the language of Sanskrit has undergone tremendous change. In comes Adi Shankaracharya at a much later stage. And even then, that aspect is still evolving. And the word karma has two connotations here. The karma that Adi Shankaracharya used in Viveka Chudamani, Saundarya Lahari, and all his commentaries on the Upanishads refers to karma kandas. That is, the religious activities one must undertake in order to go ahead, the yagyas, the yagas, and stuff. And the other connotation is action, pure karma and action. So these are the two aspects which we can think about and discuss about as to what exactly pertains. And when Swami talks about karma to us, or what we understand karma in our life, is more of that aspect of backlog or action that is somehow on to us or with us. Probably Arvind's brother can add onto this much better.
Excellent definitions. I mean, the beauty of the language of Sanskrit itself, as we had discussed earlier in our past discussions, each word has got 9 different kinds of meanings. And as Jagdish has clearly pointed it out, karma in terms of ritual and spirituality is different from karma in terms of action and material life. So that beautiful distinction has been brought about, as I should call it, samanvaya. I won't call it distinction. I would call it a consolidation of both in the beautiful song celestial Bhagavad Gita. Lord
Okay.
Krishna, so beautifully, he has, I mean, to be honest, any man with even a scientific bent of mind, if you read Bhagavad Gita, if you read Swami's own Gita Vahini, how scientifically Swami explains. I just like to draw a thread, when you talk about karma, I'm just talking about the entire rainbow, the whole Vibgyor. Okay, don't feel that I'm jumping the gun here, but there is a Vibgyor which Swami has painted in the Bhagavad Gita. He starts off with karma, which is just action. All right, we'll go into the definitions of that in the little future. And then he goes into something called karma yoga, which he defines as different from karma. And there's a definition for karma yoga, in which there is a certain degree of consciousness. Then he goes to talk about nishkama karma, which is action performed. We'll discuss that. And then he has something called karma phala tyaga after nishkama karma. And then he talks about jnana karma sannyasa, and then he goes into karma sannyasa. So scientifically, just the word karma, just look at it, how beautifully at different levels of one's evolution the word karma applies to one's own life and living. So we can start looking at it differently. I mean, but
Beautifully.
this is the Vibgyor that Lord Krishna and Swami have painted in the Bhagavad Gita in the first 5 chapters itself.
I
Wonderful
think
to
you've
just go
given us
through
a
that.
very good, what should I say, a spectrum to really consider. So, broadly speaking, action with consequence in a day to day manner is one area, and action done from a ritualistic point of view, which involves your prayers, your all that thing, is another section, which total together makes it a spectrum of karma. So
Yeah.
that is the purview of karma we are looking at.
One small
Yes.
point to add on to what Brother Arvind just now said, because many a times this question comes in front of us, that is this knowledge really helpful in day-to-day life? Is it of any practical relevance? The discussion of
Yes,
karma, it's
Hmm.
ritualistic, it's philosophical and all. And people start questioning the relevance of Bhagavad Gita. Is it really relevant to help us in a day-to-day life in action?
Mm-hmm.
But one forgets the context of Bhagavad Gita. It was not delivered on the mountain. It was not given in the Himalayan solitude. It was given
Correct.
at the center of the battlefield,
Right.
at a time where it cannot get any bigger than this when you're talking about action. Means you
Awesome
don't,
context.
that is the most belligerent it can get when it comes to context, that you don't know whether your next moment is there or not, and that is where this knowledge is coming into picture. So
Exactly.
why this is helpful is basically for action and
True.
nothing else, how to act in life. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
This
But
begs me another point, let's, as you're talking about the karma, I would also like you to bring in a concept of how this whole concept was in a way defined under karma siddhanta, as we call it, law of karma. So everything gets in that whole periphery. So while you're discussing about karma, let's also keep in mind that how these elements fall in and to create the concept of karma siddhanta, or what we call as law of karma. So Arvind, you want to add
fundamentally,
something? Yeah.
it is basically action reaction. All right. At a very, very, very banal, at a very basic level, we can simply call it action reaction. You go one step higher than that. Then you talk about cause and effect. Then you go one step higher. You said action reaction, then cause and effect. Then we talk about action and consequence. So we have action, reaction, cause, effect, consequence. These five keywords, you stitch them together, at almost at every context in our life, you begin to find that it is a circle. Where it begins, it has to end. There has to be a flow. Nothing can happen where there is a front, there is a back. As Swami himself has told several times in his divine
Beautiful.
discourses, where there is a front, there has to be a back. In the material world, there is always a cause, there is always a effect, there is always a front, there is always a back. So the karma siddhanta, the concept of karma, it's extremely complex. If you want to go into tarka, you want to read the commentaries on that, well, be my guest. We'll discuss it for a week. But at a very direct, actionable level, as we are talking about Bhagavad Gita, a literally practical philosophy. Yeah, in so-called business intelligence terms, they call it actionable intelligence. You gain all the data, you glean information from that data. From that data, you take out intelligence, and that intelligence you convert into an action plan, and that plan is based on something called actionable intelligence. The whole of karma siddhanta, as applicable to us through the Bhagavad Gita, if you really want to take a context, it is all about ensuring that a conscious knowledge that actions have consequences, and all actions have to be done with that consciousness. And how to have that consciousness, Swami has explained. I think
Beautiful.
we can delve into the different forms of action also. There are multiple forms of action. Jagdish, I think we can talk about the three forms which Swami specifically mentioned about.
Yes, but before we just go into that, brother, on small
Hmm.
conversation in Trai,
Sure.
Sure.
Swami asked this question in Trai, that why does God incarnate?
Wow.
And then there were quite a few industrialist devotees sitting in his close to Bhagwan, and we all were there, of course, around the chula. Swami gave a very different explanation that day. He said, actually, the world does not need God. And like everyone was stumped. He said, I have designed the whole philosophy in such a way, I have designed the whole thing in such a way that it's action and reaction, just the way you explained, Brother Arvind, just now. It's
Hmm.
action and its consequence, cause and effect. So I have nothing to do here. What you do, you get back. You sow a neem seed, you will get a neem fruit, or you sow a mango seed, you will get a mango fruit. Then again, Swami himself posed that question. Then why do you need God? Why does an avatar come?
Hmm.
And then Swami gave a very beautiful example. It's like a factory. A
Hmm.
factory in which a car is being manufactured or something is being manufactured. There are workers on the shop floor, and work continues. One fine day, the owner of the factory decides to step onto the floor. He normally doesn't come, but one
Hmm.
fine day he decides to step onto the factory floor, and then he
Hmm.
sees that one particular employee is working really hard with all his heart and soul, and he feels
Hmm.
that, okay, something specially needs to be done, because if he is left in that normal conveyor belt, his promotions and his things will take its own course. But now
Hmm.
that he is physically present on the floor, he can alter things.
Hmm.
And that alteration is what God comes to do. And it's a very different but beautiful explanation as to why an avatar comes in our lives. But just
In
coming
a
back to the, yeah, please go ahead.
in
Yeah,
a way we can understand.
yeah,
In a
yeah.
way we can understand. Please continue. Sorry, I
Yes.
just wanted.
Absolutely.
Swami,
In a way, we can
Swami.
understand. And coming to that, the topic that these three things, three aspects that we are talking about is Sanchita, Prarabdha, and Agami. These three aspects of karma. So, in some sense, in a very basic sense of understanding, all the repository of our past actions, a cumulative effect of our past actions is Sanchita. A portion of that which leads to our physical birth is Prarabdha, and the actions that we are going to do is Agami. So it's like the typical Bowman example that is oft quoted in most of the philosophy. So these are the three basic divisions, or what I say.
Jagdish,
Yeah,
everybody may not be familiar with that Bowman example, so
yeah.
please illustrate that. Say.
Yeah. So the basic bowman example is the following. There is a bowman who's trying to, shoot an arrow. So what he does is basically he has already shot a few arrows from his bow. They have gone out. There is no taking them back. There is no retracing or retracting them back. So it's done. So that is basically your sanchita. Sorry, prarabdha. That is, there is no
Prarabdha.
prarabdha. There are certain things which are at this point in time on the bow, which is the sanchita. And then you have the arrows in the quiver, which is your agami, or the future actions and their consequences. So
Okay, I
this
think
is
it's
a
the other way
typical.
around. It's the other way around. Just know what you said.
Uh-huh.
Agami is the arrow which is on the bow, and
On the bow,
Sanchita
sorry.
is the pool.
Sanchita is
Sanchita
the
is in
pool.
the quiver.
Quiver. Sorry. Yes.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that is why when we propitiate God,
Yeah.
when we pray to God, especially in the Lingashtakam, Sanchita Papa Vinashaka Lingam, there is a
Lingam.
beautiful line. So when we propitiate the universal powers, right, you can call it by different names, you can call it by different forms. It destroys, and that's why very beautifully Swami also says, one does not have control over prarabdham. As you said, the arrow has already been shot.
Been shot.
So we are actually living the consequences of the actions that we have done in the past. So that is prarabdham, right?
Yes.
Next, sanchitam is the whole pool of
Quiver.
actions which quiver. It is a pool of
Yes.
which we do not know.
Yeah.
We do not know. That is sanchitam. But agami is what is on the bow.
On the bow.
So in one of the
I think
commentaries,
it's a very, very beautiful thing to understand for
yes,
everybody, because I think Swami also said, no, that I can, at best, we can destroy the Sanchita and Agami. And Pralabdha, you can't, because it's already in action.
yes, we
So
have to
I'm
go
sure,
through.
Jagdish, you remember the story about saints and all that, why
Yes,
they
brother,
suffer.
but just a sidetrack.
Mm.
2007, Anil Kumar sir in Kodaikanal asks very, I mean, I was probably a little closer so I could understand. Anil Kumar sir asked Swami, in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna said that prarabdha cannot be altered. And then Swami looked at him and said, but I can alter if I am pleased. So that so this is an it was like a benediction. Swami said, I can alter if I'm pleased. So at some level, a lot depends on the intensity with which the action is coming. Also, the intensity is also equally important. Yeah.
But
Om
Jagdish,
Sri Sai
that is
Karma
like a boss
Sakraya
speaking. That
Yeah.
is like a boss speaking, because there is a glimpse. That is a glimpse of his magnanimity, that he shows you
Yeah.
that he's in control.
Yes,
But in
yes.
a normal flow, obviously it can be altered. But of
Yeah.
course, when he jumps in, then there is no debating about it.
Swami has said several times. See, in fact, I'll share my personal experience. And this was inside the interview room regarding karma. All right. Our very presence of being with Swami physically, darshan, sparshan, sambharshan is aneka janma samprapta karma bandha vidayine. All right. But on that day, Swami was so sweet. I mean, you see, it brings in, as once you made a sidetrack, this thought came into my mind I wanted to share. I was sitting right at Swami's feet. There were a lot of other brothers, and Swami was talking about how fortunate we all are to be at his lotus feet. Each guy, Swami was just giving that person past and then telling, Dhanivalla, you are here. Because of that, you are here.
Wow.
He looks at me and he says, this is quote unquote Bhagwan, all right? మీ అమ్మగారి నాయనమ్మ గారి ప్రార్థన వల్ల నువ్వు ఇక్కడ ఉన్నావురా.
Wow.
In English it says, it is because of the prayers of your mother's father's mother.
My
मतलब
God.
मेरा great grandmother on my mother's side, my mother's father's mother.
Wow.
It is because of her prayers that you are enjoying now. See, it is such a powerful statement that Swami made. It is one thing that Swami says several times in his discourses. He has told in Kodai, he has told in Trai, he has told in public discourses also. All of you were rishis and munis in your past. You have done tremendous amount of tapas. That is why you are able to come and have my darshan. And depending upon your evolution will be your sparshan and sambhashan. There is another episode which Swami talks about prapti and bhakti. I don't want to get into that. We'll talk about it when we get into bhakti actually. That it's beautiful. But here we have to understand the concept of karma is not just limited to an individual.
Yeah.
It is also associated with the powers of divinity that God decides. End of the day, let us understand this very clearly. As Abhimanyu brother put, he is the boss. So he has designed this entire framework of our existence, of our life, in which womb we are supposed to be born. That also God has decided. That is very difficult to
Wow.
accept when you look at it at a materialistic level. Very difficult to accept, because some people say, only for this birth she is your mother, only for this birth he is your father. You are not connected anyway. Sorry. When from the perspective of divinity, when Swami made this statement, it hit really home that what we enjoy as proximity to the Lord, the good thoughts that we have today, what is the word? It's called samskaram. In Telugu, we call it samskaram. Culture, tehzeeb in Urdu, it is called.
Hmm.
What we enjoy today is not just because of Arvind or Arvind as an individual soul. It is a percolated effect. That's why Swami made a very clear distinction between individual and fundamental. I'm going back to that reference, then we'll take this forward. Remember, long time back we had discussed about Raudra and Krodha.
Right.
That was the negative aspects. So if your ego comes into play, then it becomes Krodha. If it is when your love for Satya and Dharma comes into play, then it becomes Raudra. The same if you look at it from the positive way. If you do an action, if you perform an action from the fundamental perspective of Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu, the energy will flow not just to one but to many. If you perform an action only as a ritual for one's own personal growth, then it will affect only your prarabdha, your sanchita, your agami. How beautifully Swami has communicated. That is why Swami says, always say samasta loka sukhino bhavantu, samasta loka sukhino bhavantu. Let the positive energy flow to everyone. Whatever good action you do, whatever good intent you have, let it flow to everyone. Beautiful.
let me
Thank you,
let me
JC.
bring this another concept to it. I don't want people to carry this thought that we are doomed. You know, people say that, okay, hell, if you say that we can't do anything, it is done, the arrow is shot, then what do we do? So let us recap it. So Sanchita basically is the whole reservoir of karma, and which, according to our Shastras also and according to science, is basically the journey of the soul from the beginning. So maybe over millions of years and over hundreds of life forms, whatever we have accumulated, that is becomes a pool of sanchita karma.
Hmm.
Then from that sanchita karma, for this body to take shape,
Hmm.
the consequence of that is
Hmm.
given in this birth, and that becomes your pralabdha karma.
Yeah.
Prarabdha.
And how do we react to this pralabdha karma? Becomes your agami karma.
Okay.
Beautifully put.
Yes.
Beautifully put.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you take it like that, that means yes, we can't we can't help about pralabdha, but
Hmm.
to study the pralabdha karma, I think it also gives us a scientific understanding of how we should conduct today.
Hmm.
If you
True.
know the fire burns you, then you will not go near the fire. So
Correct.
if people say, how do I conduct and why should I not do certain things?
Hmm.
Our law of karma is a very beautiful, analogy to teach us how to conduct today and
Yes.
then to make a change. And of course,
Hmm.
when avatar intervenes, then there's nothing to worry.
Hmm.
But his interference is basically a huge welcome. And for that, you have to do another, that is a different penance altogether. So we
Totally.
can't, we cannot really, play safe from that side. So if you look at Sanchita Pralabdha, it is not something which is done and we are dead.
Hmm.
It is actually, we have to understand that this consequence is because of our own action.
Hmm.
So whatever happens to us
Hmm.
is because of us.
Hmm.
The what I learned, what I you can share your thoughts on it. I have
Hmm.
always learned that the first important lesson I learned from law of karma is not to blame anybody for the consequence.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
So whatever happens to us, we try to find whose fault it is.
Hmm.
So I think that first thing I've learned is that first it starts with me.
Hmm.
Because of me only this has happened.
Hmm.
Why did I find such colleagues? Why did I find such people around in my life? Is
Hmm.
because I have done something, pralabdha, to
Hmm.
attract these people to me.
Hmm.
So the ball actually game starts from me.
Hmm.
And then I should see how much I must conduct now
Hmm.
so that I change my environment.
Hmm.
Yes, Jagdish.
One small addition to what you have very beautifully summarized, Abhi brother. This current birth is a consequence of the past actions, whatever I have done in the past, but it's also an opportunity.
Exactly. I was
That
about to
one
say
must,
that.
exactly, we must understand that that is an opportunity to cut down that mountain as well, that the backlog of karma that we have, use this body effectively to cut down the mountain. How much to cut down the mountain? Enough that there is no positive or negative balance. Only then you are rid of anything excess or less. You are again bound to take birth to either enjoy or suffer the consequences. But
Absolutely.
here, in same on continuing on same line again, in Kodaikanal, 2000 Ishwaramma Day, 6th
Hmm.
of May, we all were, Swami gave us t-shirts to do serving prasadam to all the devotees. He
Hmm.
had the school kids, little kids had come and we were distributing prasadam.
Hmm.
So after everything got over, Swami was about to retire and we saw that opportunity. We stopped everything. We quickly washed our hands and we came around, soiled t-shirts and everything. And Swami looked at us and he was a little emotional.
Hmm.
And he said, Chala adrushtam Ramiku. It's,
Chala?
you are very fortunate. Chala
Ah.
adrushtam Ramiku. You are very fortunate.
Hmm.
So naturally, with so close proximity with Bhagwan, you know that you are fortunate, or at least we think that we know. And we
Hmm.
said, yes, Swami, we are fortunate. We are so close to you at this point in time. We are getting this opportunity. Swami said,
Hmm.
no, 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 no. That is there. That is not because of you. That is, as Brother Arvind just now pointed out, it was because of your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents. You are here. But the fact that you got an opportunity to serve, that you are
Wow.
able to engage in action,
Wow.
so,
Hmm.
what appears to be sort of a pessimistic view sometimes, that, is there something that I can really do because I already have this backlog with me? If I flip the coin and say this is an opportunity, the very fact that I have a body and I have an
Hmm.
opportunity to act, the whole game changes.
Totally. That is why Swami says, Sharira Madhyam Kaludharma Sadhakam,
Absolutely.
Paropokarardham Idam
Idam
Shariram.
Shariram.
And the great Adi Shankara says in the second sloka, my favorite sloka of Viveka Chudamani, Jantu Nam Narajarma
Narajanam.
Durlabham.
Beautiful.
So let's not get into that. But the point is,
So, Jagdish, you really made a very sensitive point.
Ji.
I don't recall that occasion, but there was once he said there was something about some abuses or some talk like that, and Bhagwan had made a quick reference to this point, and he said exactly what you just mentioned, that in whatever form you get the body, if it's a
Yeah.
human body,
Yeah.
is a blessing.
Blessing.
Yes.
Then how do you utilize it is your
Yes.
karma.
Exactly.
True.
Because this body is so precious. Even devatas are waiting for this.
Yeah.
So the what should I say? The excuse can apparently be good or not so good,
Yeah.
but the end result is the human body.
Absolutely, brother.
And that is why Bhagavan always used to tell us that the debt. Somebody said, Swami, in the world today, there are people who don't behave in parental manner. They're not good parents. They neglect the children. And then it becomes very difficult for people to convince the children to respect the parents.
Yes.
And it's a very practical thing which you can see around the world today.
Hmm.
And the child will tell you, my dad was never around, my mom did not take care, then why should I? So it's a very natural and very logical
Hmm.
explanation from the child's perspective.
Hmm.
But I cannot help but think from Bhagwan when he says, that even if they are the worst parent on earth,
Hmm.
he said that even if they are the worst parent on earth,
Hmm.
just by the virtue of your body
Hmm.
which you are carrying
Hmm.
and that opportunity that you have got,
Hmm.
their debt is so much on you that even if you pay, if you give your blood continuously for rest of your life as a repayment of the debt, you will still not be able to repay them.
Absolutely, brother.
Pitru
So,
Runa, Daiva
so
Runa, Matru Runa. Yes.
So
So many runas are there.
can you imagine the consequence of this? So
Hmm.
when you mentioned about the human body, I thought it's a very apparent, and now I can connect also that we cannot neglect or overlook the pralabdha
and,
and blame somebody and say that so what? No,
absolutely,
you got it.
yes.
And the moment
Hmm.
you start thinking, like Swami says, no, one day is very beautiful. He says, Swami, if I did something I don't know, I'm not conscious of it. So will
Hmm.
I be, you know, facing the consequence of that action? He says the day you start thinking that you did something, the whole old one will come back to you.
Back to you.
My God.
So today you may be innocent and you did
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
Yes.
But after 10 years, you wake up and say, hell, I did that. Yeah, it was a mistake. So all that will come back to you on that day and you have to
Hmm.
face the consequence.
So it ultimately
Very,
comes
very.
down to doership, the feeling of doership. The moment I
So
realize
even
I
if
am the
yeah,
doer.
the moment you realize, even if you realize that after 10 years, 15 years, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
But the moment you realize it, that I have done it, finished, then you have
Concept
to
of
bear
I
the
is very
consequence.
dangerous. Concept of I. That's why Swami says, na, at any point in time, easiest solution. We boys used to keep asking Swami. I mean, in the sense, certain boys had the temerity to ask him, and Bhagwan gives the answer both privately and publicly. He says, easiest way for you ఏది చేసినా స్వామి కోసం చేయండి సర్వకర్మ భగవత్ ప్రీత్యార్థం వాట్
Beautiful.
ఎవర్ యూ డూ ఇట్ ఫార్ స్వామి డూ ఇట్ ఫార్ స్వామి డూ
Arvind,
ఇట్
we'll
ఫార్
come
స్వామి
there.
no no
We'll come there.
I'm
We'll
just
come
saying
there.
I'll
No,
come
no,
there.
I
I
know.
will definitely come there. But I
Otherwise, the
just
flow will.
wanted to add this line to
Yeah,
what you said. We'll go there. We'll definitely
yeah,
have to go organically towards that.
yeah. Otherwise,
But
we'll
this
jump the
thought
time.
just came. I wanted to share. So I just put it out there. But before we
uh,
go into that, in addition to Agami, Sanchita, and Prarabdha, these are the different types of karmas and which are impacting our existence, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I may define it that way, Agami,
Yeah.
Sanchita, and Prarabdha
And
define
Prarabdha.
our existence.
Hmm. Hmm.
But once we come into existence, we cannot stay without doing action. As JC put it beautifully, if you have a body, you have to perform action. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Swami beautifully describes different forms of action. They are Sakarma, Vikarma, and Akarma.
Okay.
Very simple
Sukarma.
Sanskrit terms.
Sukarma.
Sukarma is good action. Satkarma, Sukarma is good action. Vikarma is bad action. Vi is usually a prefix for everything that is evil or wrong. And then you have Akarma, which is a neutral, which is neither here nor there, non performance of action. Now, these three are very beautifully defined by Bhagwan, both in Bhagavad Gita as well as in his discourses in Gita Vahini, as well as in his divine discourses. Swami has beautifully spoken about these three different forms of action and which form of action is best. Now, as you beautifully pointed out, where there is a front, there is a back. Prarabdha is not negative, it is positive, it is an opportunity. It is not a curse, it is an opportunity. Likewise, Vikarma can be akin to darkness. All right?
Yeah.
Only when you know what is darkness or experience what is darkness, you will know the value of light. Swami himself said this in an interview. I will share that at the appropriate time. Only when you know what is darkness, you will know the value of light. So, Vikarma by itself in toto is not wrong. If you perform a bad action, which is Vikarma, then yes, as Abhi brother said, I am doing a bad action, the consequence will come to me. Right? Sukarma, good actions, anything that will take you closer to God, anything that will help people, anything that is in terms of paropakarartham, whatever fits into the Vedantic parlum, into anything that will benefit mankind is Sukarma, good action. Now, in good actions also there are different degrees. We'll get into that. And finally comes akarma. Many people feel, boss, if I do a bad action, it is vikarma, I'll have bad consequences. If I do sukarma, I'll have good consequences. So with bad, my bad balance goes up, and with good, my good balance goes up. Why don't I just sit back and not do anything at all? Nothing will affect me. So that's one way of looking at it. As if some great person said, humility is the hallmark of the noble, but the false one of the escapist. Okay, I'm just bringing in that line here. So many people use akarma saying that, "Arre boss, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to participate in this action. I don't want to perform action." But Swami himself says, not performing action is impossible. Nakarmana manaramba naiskaryam purushosnute nacha sannyasana deva siddhim samadhigacchati. It is impossible for you to stay without doing action. In Bhagavad Gita, it's very, very clear. So not performing action in itself can lead you into vikarma. There are various definitions of that. So let's see if we can discuss a little bit on these
Okay,
three things.
since you have started this discussion on sukarma, the type of action, let us break it down. Okay,
Hmm.
so let us look at it one by one.
Hmm.
So start with sukarma. Okay, so
Jagdish.
what is sukarma? How do you define good, Jagdish?
Hmm.
So, based on what we have learned at his lotus feet, any action that is pleasing to him. Again, Swami's question in Trai, how do you judge whether an action is good or bad? So, different people started quoting. We tend to complicate things. But as Occam razor goes as a theory, Occam's razor says that if there is a complicated problem, the solution is typically very simple. Swami gave the Occam's razor solution. His solution was, ask before conducting any action, will this please Swami? Yes or
Correct.
no? If the answer is yes, do it. If not, do it. So at the end of the day, Sukarma is basically all those questions for which Swami's answer is yes. Go ahead and do
Perfect.
it. That is what is pleasing him. That is what is good for him. Means that is what he likes us or he wants us to do. And that is Sukarma. Sometimes, however, there is a difference between Shreyas and Preyas. Sometimes there is a laddu in front of you and you say, Swami, there's a laddu in front of me. What should I do? Swami will say, eat it. That's very pleasant. We want to eat it. But there might be occasions when there might be a hungry man standing right opposite. And that time, Swami might tell, don't eat, give it to him.
Correct.
So that Shreyas and Preyas also comes into picture. So basically, the doing of the right action
You
that has
used
the
the
right
word
impact.
shreyas and prayas. I
Yeah.
think you should define. You should
Yeah.
put it in English.
Elaborate them. Yeah.
So Shreyas basically are those, or let me first put Preyas. Preyas is that which is pleasing to me. That is pleasing to me. Shreyas is that is noble, or that is the right thing to do. So it's always pleasing to me to eat the laddu, but it is nobler for me to share it with a hungry man, or it's easy for me to eat food. That is what Preyas is. That is very inviting to me. That is very tempting to me. But Shreyas, Shreyo Marga and Preyo Marga. Shreyo means the noble path.
So can we call it individual and fundamental?
Individual and fundamental. Absolutely. So
So
in
prayas would be individual, Shreyas would be fundamental.
more fundamental. Absolutely.
That means it is benefits more people. Shreyas
More people.
benefits more people. Prayas is more of an individualistic
It's
perspective.
my me and mine kind of a thing.
Me and mine
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
Okay, okay,
So
okay.
so basically the Sukarma is basically all those actions that take us on the Shreyo Marga, or that which
Awesome.
have good results. And that is the definition given by Bhagwan in the Dharma Vahini.
Very
That is the
nice.
kind of action.
I think
Very, very nice.
this definition will help people who are not exposed to Bhagwan in a much closer manner, because I always felt it was such an easy example when people say that just think what Swami will like, what he will not like.
Yeah.
But I realized that it is because we have this blessing of seeing and known him, so it becomes very easy for us to comprehend. But for people who have not been blessed like that, it will be difficult for. But this Shreyas part is as a good comprehension. And I think
It's a
that
very
is where
good definition.
Bhagwan also said that, the similar thought I think was that any action which benefits the larger
Exactly.
creation
Yes. Yes.
is good.
Good.
If an action only helps you per se, then it's a question mark. Then you should always analyze. Pariprashna should start.
Pariprashna.
That is it good or not? But
Yes.
if it is helping majority, then that action can be termed as sukarma.
In this context, I'd just like to add one more line here. there are two paths that one can choose whenever one is faced with a predicament in performing an action, whether it is sukarma, vikarma, or akarma. As Swami said, these are the pravritti marga or the nivritti marga. See, if one wants to evolve, then one has to take the nivritti marga. If one is looking at a context, if actions are being performed within a particular time frame, kala karana kartavya or samayam sandarbham, as Swami says, kala is time, karana is reason, kartavya is duty or responsibility, samayam is again time, sandarbham is context. With these five parameters, if we have to perform an action, then it becomes pravritti.
Pravritti. Beautiful.
If we put ourselves into a physical
Arvind,
context,
slow. Go back
I'll come
again.
back. I'll come
Rewind
back.
it again because it's a good
So,
information for everybody to
right. So,
rewind.
with respect to karma, we have now
Hmm.
defined as Shreyas or Preyas.
Hmm.
Correct? We have defined Sukarma, Vikarma, and Akarma. Or rather, we are discussing Sukarma. No, Vikarma and Akarma are yet to come. In Sukarma, good actions, we have defined them as an individual or a fundamental. Individual is Preyas and fundamental is Shreyas. In addition to these two, there are two ways. You can take a Preyo, you can take Preyas, which is the Preyo Marga, which is the external path as it is called. In that, again, you have Pravritti and Nivritti. You can take the Shreyo Marga, and in that, again, you have Pravritti and Nivritti.
Nivritti.
Even if you are performing a fundamental action meant for the benefit of everyone, the thought in your mind,
Exactly.
that makes it either Pravritti or Nivritti.
Now
As
again,
Abhivai beautifully put it.
you put it again. You define the word pravritti and nivritti for everybody.
Yeah, pravritti is an action that is externally oriented. Base very simple language.
Yeah.
Pravritti is an externally oriented thing. Nivritti is internally oriented. Right? Any action internally oriented is for evolution.
Evolution.
Any action that is externally oriented is for performance of one's action in this materialistic world. This is how black and white definitions can be given. But let me complicate it a bit further. Even in pravritti, even if you are performing an action in the pravritti marga and with the prayers feeling, you might be doing something really good. How do you like that? So sukarma can be pravritti or nivritti. It can be prayas or shreyas,
Yes.
depending upon our intention. That is why Swami says Bhagavantudu Bhava Priyudu.
Correct.
So not only do we talk about physical action, we also talk about the intent.
Yeah.
So this will open up a totally different thread. We'll
No,
discuss about it when the context.
actually, I'm happy that you brought it up because
Hmm.
one of the dimension of karma
Hmm.
is also intent.
Hmm.
Because the whole law of karma, if you look at it, it is not action based.
It's
It's an
intent.
intent based.
Intent based.
Exactly.
So if a person is killing somebody on a street,
Hmm.
he will be hanged. But if the same person kills somebody on the border saving the country, he's awarded. So the intent of the action creates. That is why many times in the Western thought we always use law of karma as law of intent also.
Yeah.
So Arvind, thank you for bringing that flavor also in it, which is
Yeah.
very important flavor actually, because intent does play the main important aspect here. So
So
great, thank you for that.
intent will actually lead to doership and non-doership.
Yes.
So as you had mentioned that beautiful example,
Intent will take into the next stage.
next
Sorry.
level.
Okay, perfect.
So
So
let
let
me go
us
back to that Vibjyor
perfect.
example. I'll
Yeah.
just go back to that Vibjyor example. We are still in the karma level. From karma, we have to go to karma yoga level. Between karma and karma yoga, we are discussing sukarma, vikarma, and akarma. So
Akarma.
we have, if sukarma, we are clean kala, karana, and kartavya, samaya, and sandarbha. Once again, I'll repeat. Kala is time, karana is reason, kartavya is duty or responsibility. Samaya again is time. When you say kala, it is a big perspective. Samaya is at that moment, Sandarbha is context. So
They
kala
call
is a
it
big
desh kal. In the simple, they say desh
desh
kal
kal
paristiti.
paristhiti.
Paristhiti.
Desh
Exactly.
kal paristiti. The
So desh kal
time,
paristhiti has a
the
different
time,
connotation,
place,
right?
and circumstances. The time,
No,
place, and
that
Exactly.
circumstances. Basically,
that is for
just the broader
creating
terms.
a broader term. That is for creating a circumstance for us to perform our action in. But kala karana kartavya samaya sandarbha pertain to the doer or rather the actor, I would like to call them, not the doer. Let's not confuse ourselves. We'll call ourselves actors. The Sutradhari is sitting behind us. We are all Patradharis. So let us be actors. So this is the way Sukarma itself has got so many flavors. And this is where Swami says, Yukta Vichakshana Shakti has to come in. We have to use our Yukti, our discrimination. Right? So that's another parallel. We will get into that if at
Okay,
all the context comes.
let's
Let's
park
not
the
get into
Sukarma
that.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's come into Vikarma now. Let us
This
dissect a
is
little bit of
interesting.
Vikarma. So
So Vikarma is the
how do you define an action which is not good? I won't call it bad. Let's call it not good.
okay.
So
Uh,
who will define that not good
in one of
transfer?
our earlier conversations, we had this beautiful statement: "One man's food is another man's poison." So, we so the concept of Vikarma can mean different things. But taking Abhivai's example, which he has given right now, a few minutes ago, killing a person on the street by an individual is punishable by law. But killing a person on the border by a soldier is his line of duty. There he will be rewarded. So, Vikarma, the definition of Vikarma is bad action or not good action, right? But the intent behind that action defines whether the consequence of that action will be positive or negative. That is one aspect of Vikarma. The second aspect of Vikarma that we have to look at is when we are doing Sukarma, it is one person who is benefiting many. In Vikarma, it is a many to one relationship. As defined by our in Vedantic parlance, it is defined as a many to one relationship, wherein there are said to be five stakeholders for one Vikarma to be performed. Five stakeholders.
Wow.
The person who got the idea, or rather, should I say, the one who construed the idea. Then the sponsor, if he has discussed that negative idea with somebody and the other person is willing to sponsor this person. The third person is the perpetrator. So you can call one instigator, then you can call sponsor, then you can call perpetrator, the guy who actually does it, the person who actually does the action. And then you have somebody called, two more people are involved here, the witness and the supporter. Just look how beautifully in Vedantic parlance they have defined these five different stakeholders for one Vikarma. The person who got the bad thought, the person and shared it with another person, the sponsor of that bad thought, he has agreed with this person and they are willing to get it into action. The third person, the perpetrator, who has implemented the thought into an action. The witness, a person who has seen that Vikarma being performed, but he has not said or done anything. He or she has not said or done anything. And finally, the supporter of that Vikarma. These are the five people who will have to, let me be a little candid here, this is important. These are the five people who will have to suffer the consequences of Vikarma. See,
Interesting. This is Bhagwan when he gave this example. He gave
hmm,
a example from Mahabharata
Mahabharata.
to
hmm,
explain
Yes.
this whole thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I
yes,
think
bhai.
he highlighted the people who remain silent witnesses,
Yes.
who do not react, like Bhishma.
Yeah.
Hmm,
So he was more harsh on them. He
correct.
said they are the people who commit the most. They're equally
Guilty.
punishable, or
Hmm,
they have the equal responsibility as the person who commits that crime.
hmm.
So a silent witness is also equally punishable in the law of karma. And Arvind, the way you mentioned, it's very interesting to note that Bhagwan has pointed out these five people and left out the person who really got impacted by the action of it, right? So that brings to a point that the person who was actually targeted,
Hmm,
he is not a sufferer. He's only
hmm.
getting the consequence of his pralabdha karma.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Extremely
Isn't
well connected, brother.
isn't
Extremely.
it fantastic?
Perfectly connected.
So all these
Beautifully.
five people have to come together because of his the karma, that I have
Hmm,
done something, that I have brought
hmm,
these five people together to
hmm,
hurt me or to harm
hmm,
me.
hmm.
That means I must have done something to these five people.
Account is being settled.
being said. But imagine how big it goes, right? Eh? My God.
Absolutely.
One small tangent, brother, here.
Hmm.
Yes.
At that point, there is a choice. These five people have a choice,
Hmm.
irrespective of what the other person's prarabdha is. He will get it anyhow. If not through these five persons, through some truck
He'll
or
get
lorry, also he'll get it. He'll get it
absolutely
He'll
right.
get
anytime.
it. He'll get it.
But
He'll get it.
am I a party to that is a question, and this is where the difference between the choice comes into picture. Let me
Yeah.
take you all back to the Treta Yuga. The scene is the penultimate day of the war between
Hmm.
Rama and Ravana.
Hmm.
Ravana is burdened by the loss of all his sons. The previous day, Indrajit was killed.
Hmm.
He is morally, emotionally, in every way, he is down. But just to honor the code of war, he comes into the battlefield with
Hmm.
one arrow. Rama removes the umbrella or the chatram, what they call it, of this chariot. His
Hmm.
next arrow, his crown falls. The third
Hmm.
arrow, his charioteer is injured.
Hmm.
He breaks the wheel. Everything is done. All that separated Ravana from death was that arrow which was on Rama's bow.
Hmm.
And Rama, what he does is he puts it down and says, Ravana, today you are not emotionally well. You're suffering. You're burdened by the loss of your near and dear ones. Go and come fresh tomorrow.
Come
Imagine
fresh
that man
to
for 14 years. He was in search. He was one pointedly his attention was just one point to get Sita back. That
Hmm.
moment was in front of him, and he tells, "Go, Ravana." That is a
Hmm.
choice, and
Hmm.
that such kinds of choice in the karmic parlance come in front of us time and again.
Hmm.
And what do we do with that choice? Do we say that okay, he was destined to get it, so I was destined to do it? That's a very wrong way. What he was destined is a different thing. In fact, in
Hmm.
the Yoga Vasishta, there's a very beautiful description, an analogy which is used time and again. A crow coming and sitting on a coconut tree and the
Hmm.
coconut falling.
Hmm.
And Rama is in conversation with Vasishtha. And Vasishtha makes a very beautiful point. He's giving the ultimate gyan to Rama himself, and he tells Rama, the
Hmm.
whole world, which is driven by cause and effect, always tries to correlate events. It says the coconut fell because the crow came and sat.
Hmm.
No, the coconut fell because it had to fall. The crow
That's
came and
it.
sat because it had to sit. But it's
That's
the
it.
interplay of life that these two
Hmm.
appear synchronous. We have a
Absolutely.
choice, and that choice I thought I'll bring it forth here.
That
The last
choice
straw broke the back is not the
of the
straw
camel.
breaking the back, but it has to break. So
Exactly.
I think
That
it's
is
fantastic. The good
exactly
point, very good point
that
you
is the
raised. That
point where agami comes into play.
Yes.
So even in our Vedantic parlance, Swami has made it very clear that you have complete control over your agami and your sanchitam. You are adding to your pool of karmas. If you perform good action, it will add to the good action. It won't cancel. Nothing will get cancelled. It will
Exactly.
good
okay.
action will
Hold on,
give you
Arvind.
good result.
That thought you hold. We'll come back to that. So
No,
let us jump
agami is
into the
what I want to
third.
point out. Yeah.
No,
Now
but
come
we'll
to
come to that.
akarma.
We'll come to akarma. Let's come to third one,
Hmm.
akarma. How
Hmm.
do we understand akarma now?
I would actually bluntly put it as the guys who are silently sitting and watching everything happening without doing any good action or without trying to prevent bad things from happening. I once again go back to that my favorite slokam from Bhagavad Gita. Nakarmana manaramba naishkarmyam punushošnute nacha sannyasana deva siddhim samadhikachyate. It means
No, but that becomes
no,
vikarma, no?
no. It
That
is
is part
akarma
of
only.
vikarma.
No. It can be applied to both. That's why I'm saying. Let me go back to that. As JC, see, the beauty of Bhagavad Gita is that JC has just not spoken about choice, right? How beautifully Swami brings in our thoughts. Thank you, Swami. He has brought in the concept of choice exactly at the right moment. It is the choice that makes one action either a sukarma or a vikarma or an akarma. The context is provided to us, a circumstance is provided to us. It is our choice to
No,
respond,
no,
react,
correct,
or
correct.
not act.
But I'm trying to get that kind of a definition of akarma.
Hmm.
So what is how do we understand? How do we understand what does akarma mean?
Not performing an action when
So it
one
is
is
it is
expected
it
to
is
perform an action.
willing. Yeah, it is a willing
It's a
denial of
conscious
action.
decision. It's a conscious
Conscious
decision
decision
not
of
to
not to
perform an action.
perform.
Not to perform an action.
So
Yes.
that
So
is why
that
I
becomes
said
akarma.
that is the
Con-
beauty of it. The concept of
Yeah.
choice makes
yeah.
such a beautiful difference for the same thing. I have a pen. With the pen, I can sign a death warrant, I can sign a medical certificate, I can sign a release. See, the instrument makes a difference,
Correct.
and the instrument in this case is the intent.
Yeah.
How beautifully Bhagavan connects everything. And
So sometimes when people want to escape, so to, if I put it word like,
hmm,
escape being
hmm,
involved in an action,
hmm,
I don't want to get involved. Like you see something happening and you say, hey, I don't want to get involved, man.
hmm,
That is part of akarma. Can that be called
hmm. It is definitely in akarma.
akarma? So
It is.
akarma also has consequences,
Yes.
Yes, beautifully
Yes.
put
And
by.
that is beautiful.
There is
and
no action.
that is a beauty to understand. So
Yes.
if I may put it together,
Hmm,
sukarma has consequences which we consider as good.
Yeah.
hmm,
Vikarma has consequences which we interpret as bad.
Bad.
correct.
And akarma also has consequences
Hmm.
which is usually bad.
And more often we don't know.
Usually. I'm sure we can avoid certain things just to not hurt somebody and we may get a good deed out of it.
Hmm.
But usually, akarma is a negative, that connotation. So, sukarma, vikarma, akarma. All
Yes.
three are what we have already discussed, like action, reaction, cause, effect, action, consequence, that story, isn't
Hmm.
it?
This
So,
that's why I would just like to add one line here. I don't know whether it is palatable to everybody, but Edmund Burke, it's one of my most favorite thoughts which come to my mind when we are talking about akarma. That is not performing any action. It says the only thing needed for evil to prosper is for the good to stand by and do nothing.
Absolutely. Beautifully put.
It's a very powerful statement he made
yes,
when he was talking about Second World War and the amount of damage that human beings were doing to other human beings. I mean, it was a very powerful statement that he made. And when we look at it from the perspective of akarma, the only thing needed for the for evil to succeed was for the good to stand by and do nothing. That is why Swami said, as Abhibai clearly
certainly.
put it, if you know that something is going wrong, and if it is within your limits or within your purview or within your strength to prevent it from happening, or at least tell that person not to do something, or do it, boss. You don't lose anything. Just by suggesting to the person a right path, or telling that person not to go onto the wrong path, is at least you are doing something positive. By being
Thank you.
silent.
Let me bring a question. Our
Yeah.
brother Pramod, one of the
Hmm.
viewers, is been asking this question, and we wanted to discuss that.
Hmm.
Uh, he let me read it quickly. It is a very beautiful. He says that if you believe that every breath is by God's will, so every action should also be His will. So why do I face a consequence of any action if it is done by God?
If you have reached that level wherein you have given up doership, you have given up ownership, you have given up your definition of your own existence and your own individual identity, then nothing will affect you. This is what Swami himself told. It is there in Bhagavad Gita, all right? Krishna is telling Arjuna, I don't want to go into the Sanskrit slokas, but very clearly Krishna tells Arjuna, the moment you
No,
give up
actually, this
complete.
happened. This happened. I
Hmm,
think. I think Jagdish, you must be aware. Because I saw it in a video, and Boya told me. I think it was in Kodai or somewhere in a session, and one boy. I don't know. It could be Purnchandra. One boy had asked Swami that Swami, if everything is God,
Yes.
then why do I have to,
Suffer
worry
the
about the
consequence.
consequence of my action?
Yes.
hmm.
Bhagavan says, you know it, but you haven't experienced it.
Experienced it. Absolutely.
It
No.
was very, immediate answer. Swami said,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
it now, but you haven't experienced it.
Experienced it.
The day
Yes.
you believe, experience it, then there is
This is
no
just a small
consequence.
experience on these lines, brother. I'm sure you all would be knowing this, but for the benefit of brother Pramod, it would be nice to share it here. One boy who got fantastic opportunity to be in close proximity with Bhagwan for quite some time, over a period of time, he had that proximity. And one fine day, he came late for darshan. So by the time Swami had already come, that day Swami came a bit early. But you have to be on the guard, right? These opportunities are great opportunities. You cannot take anything lightly. He was a bit late, probably. The next day, Swami came a little earlier. And this was not indication enough for him. And he came on the usual time, and he again came late. And then Swami very casually asked him, "Yem Bangaru, you're coming late to darshan nowadays." So now, when we are posed with such questions by him, we sometimes make the mistake and get doubly trapped by quoting philosophy to him. So what that boy said was, "Swami, anyhow you are everywhere. Even when I'm in the hostel, when I'm walking on the road, you are everywhere." Swami's face changed, stern look on his face, and says, "Are you convinced about it? Are you convinced that I'm everywhere?" This boy started trembling. He started sweating. He said, "No, Swami." "Then shut up and come to Mandir on time." That's the only thing Swami said. So unless and until you reach that level wherein you have experienced that, it's a different thing. Then nothing will affect you. Nothing will touch you. But unless and until we make that transition, it's extremely important for us to be rooted in our duties in the right way. Sukarma, keeping Sukarma in mind, keeping the Shreyo Marga in mind, to engage in the rightful activity. The day we realize actions won't matter to us, there will be no difference between Ganga water and rainwater, as Ramakrishna Paramahansa very beautifully put. But until that comes, it's a choice to engage in righteous activity or righteous action.
Before we go further,
there is a
okay.
confusion. There is more questions on akarma concept. One Srinivasan brother is reconfirming that Arvind meant intentional
Yes.
inaction.
Yes.
Is that akarma?
Yes.
So I said yes, that is fine, right, Arvind?
It is true.
So that is,
it is true.
But brother Saurabh is here. He has. Let me put this question up because he has. The concept of akarma is still quite tricky because intentional inaction is constrained by what and how much we can do given the time and circumstances. Your thoughts?
This is exactly what I said. I just finished that statement. This is exactly what I meant, or not what I meant, what our Vedanta said when it gave you those 5 parameters: Kala, Karana, Kartavya, Samaya, Sandarbha.
Yeah.
See, all of us are limited by time and space. We are part of this 3-dimensional world, and the 4th dimension is time. Within these 5 constraints, what we are able to perform at that particular point in time will define it as action or inaction. If you are in a position to do something and you deliberately do not do it, then it is akarma, according to Kala, Karana, Kartavya, Samaya, and Sandarbha. If it is beyond your control and you are not able to do anything, it is not akarma. Brother Saurabh, I hope the answer is clear. Sairam.
I will take this opportunity to quote a small Chinnakatha which Swami narrated so often in so many discourses.
Sure, Javid.
It is not necessary that we shy away from action. What we can do, the reason why we get into this mode of akarma is basically because we don't have a complete understanding of Deshakala Paristhiti.
Agreed.
There was a particular person who was running, or there was a deer which was actually running, and there was a mendicant in a forest. And the mendicant sees the deer brushing or running past him in a particular direction. And then comes a person chasing him, the hunter who's chasing the deer and wants to kill it. Now the hunter asks the sage a question: did you see the deer? Now the question is this. Now the Swami
What
puts such a
dilemma.
beautiful dilemma in
Yes,
front.
yes,
Because if he
yes.
says yes and he points the direction, he is equally responsible because he becomes a co-conspirator in the deer getting killed. So he becomes one of the 5 participants of that concept.
Vikarma.
Yes, but the consciousness, the whole challenge is, how do I go from vikarma to akarma? Means consciously slide into a direction wherein I do not become the recipient of that karma. So what he says is very beautiful. He says, the eyes that see cannot speak, and the mouth that speaks cannot see. So I cannot tell you. So basically
Awesome.
what he says is, it is the eyes that saw the deer running, but the eyes cannot tell you anything. The mouth that knows how to speak actually has not seen because it does not have eyes. So, and he tells that, and he doesn't tell anything, whether he has seen, whether he has not seen. He ends there and goes into meditation again. Now this fellow got really confused what this fellow is speaking, and he runs away. But this is the way of consciously trying to side away so that the karmic influence doesn't touch us in this respect.
What is
This
that
is called
statement? Speak
yuk.
the pleasant truth, unpleasant truth need
No,
not be
I'll tell you that.
spoken.
I'll tell that. Satyam bruyat, priyam
Priyam
bruyat,
bruyat.
Priyam
na
bruyat,
bruyat,
satyam
satyam
apriyam
apriyam.
na
Apriyam.
bruyat.
Yeah, yeah,
Satyam
yeah.
And
apriyam
in
na bruyat.
addition to that, in the exact context which earlier I had mentioned, yukta yukta vichakshana shakti,
Kshana Shakti. Good.
the
Beautiful.
discrimination, the ability to discriminate when we are performing an action, when we are about to do something. That's why this on the spur of the moment I did certain things. Like, come on,
Yeah.
yeah. Spur of the moment will always put you on the spur. So one has to be conscious. That's the beauty, as the word which Jagdish used, consciousness.
Yeah.
See, that is where the word conscious, I use the word deliberate when I was talking about in the materialistic perspective, but in the spiritual perspective, the word that is used is conscious or aware. Awareness is a much higher level, but conscious. Are you conscious? This rishi, this mendicant was conscious about the consequences of his action, the consequences of his word, and the consequences of his thought, word, and action. He was conscious of all three. So when we talk about, if we can go into finer details, akarma, vikarma, sukarma, the beauty of this is when you are aware, when you are conscious that your thought, your word, and your deed will end up in something that will benefit the whole of humanity. This is the fundamental, deepest level. That is pure sukarma. If
Beautiful.
your thought, word, and deed at some point in time, at some level, may not affect everybody else, okay, then it comes into the preyas part of sukarma.
Wow.
All right. I'm being very categorical here because by Swami's grace, reading Swami's discourses has really enriched for the past 10, 15 days. It's been wonderful. Every day I've been following that spiritual diet which Brother Ranganath Raju had shared 2 weeks ago. I'm literally reading Bhagwan's discourses in the morning immediately after my morning cup of ragi is really, really enriching. So this is the beauty which Bhagwan brings. So now we are clear about what is sukarma scientifically, so to speak. Vikarma, definitely yes. Now akarma also has been clarified. Now if we move from this on to the next level, the complication begins. Occam's razor ceases to exist, and the next level of sadhana begins.
No, no.
The
Hold on,
first
hold
step
on.
of sadhana.
Hold on. Let's keep it to this. Okay. See,
Yeah.
the beauty of this action when we are discussing, it is also a very beautiful reminder that whether you do an act for goodness, whether you do a good act without the goodness, or you remain neutral, whether for good reasons or not good so good reasons, all three are a trap. And that is what we have to really understand. So as we grow, we realize that in bhukti, first Bhagwan teaches you how to act. And then he teaches you that only through action you will learn how to get out of action.
Hmm.
And the only way to get out of action is action itself.
Action itself.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the only change which I can define at this point of time is probably the intent of the action
Absolutely.
or the approach towards the action. So let us look at that aspect. And, like Arvind, Jagdish, you both know that example which Swami gives. You use one thorn to take out
Thorn.
the other thorn from your body.
Yeah.
So basically, afterwards, you have to drop that first thorn also.
Also.
You have to discard. So probably between Vikarma and Sukarma, Sukarma could be the better thorn which is helping you to remove the Vikarma thorn. But after all, Sukarma also must disappear.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
let us spend 2 minutes in defining or discussing about good and bad, how these interpretations can cloud our judgment. How is it possible to act without the dilemma of good and bad? Is it possible to look at life without the spectrum of black and white kind of a scenario? Can we just accept things as they are?
This is a $1 billion question, brother. Even the greatest stalwarts in Indian mythology struggled with that. And one of the most beautiful answers to this problem was given by Swami in the interview room. The context is of Mahabharata. It is said that Yudhishthira's chariot always moved 3 fingers above the ground, or 4 fingers above the ground, because he was slightly above the mortals. So much was his righteousness or adherence to righteousness
Wow.
that his chariot never actually touched the ground. It always floated
Correct.
on the ground.
Yes.
But the day on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when he uttered Ashwathama Hatahaiti Kunjara, that day his chariot touches the ground because he uttered a lie and he has become a mortal, just like anyone else. And his chariot touches the ground. Now, everyone believes, so everyone thought that Yudhishthira's chariot touched the ground because of that one lie. That is his constant indulgence in that action. But who is actually the person who was behind this thing? It was Krishna. So somebody asked Swami in the interview room, Swami, if this was done at the behest of Krishna, how can God advise somebody to go on the wrong path? Because it was ultimately Krishna responsible for his chariot coming down, whether we want it or not. And then Swami said something extremely beautiful. Swami said the chariot did not come down because he uttered the lie. The chariot came down because while uttering that statement, that statement, by the way, was not a lie. While uttering the statement, he was thinking, what is this Krishna making me do? Why is he making me tell a lie? He didn't do it with the feeling of surrender. The
Correct.
feeling that if Krishna can tell me to do something, how can it be wrong? If he had that feeling in mind, the chariot wouldn't have touched. The doubt that crept in mind. So this is that $1 billion question where even people like Yudhishthira struggled to, bifurcate the nuances of karma, the nuances of action, when it is right, when it is wrong, the spirit behind it, the intent behind it. And Swami gave that very just tangentially opposite example Swami again gives. Krishna has a headache. The only solution to that headache is dust from the feet of his devotee. Everyone is hesitant. How can we do it? How can we do it? Gopikas tell, take it immediately. Narada tells, you will rot in hell. I said, I'm ready to rot in hell for next 7,000 lives. If it gives a moment of relief to my Krishna. And that makes God so happy. So you see both these examples.
Yeah.
Tangentially opposite. One actually is a wrong action, but see the intent. The other is the right action, but see the intent again. And that is what makes the difference in both of them. And I thought this
To
would
just
be
add
the,
one
yeah,
line, to just add one. Swami
sure.
mentioned this when he was talking about Kathopanishad and Kenopanishad in the Bhajan Hall discourses. There was this sage who was falling from a precipice. He was a very, very knowledgeable sage. He was falling from a precipice. He was falling. And then he says, if the Vedas are true,
True.
God should protect me. God protects him. He's alive, but he loses one eye. So he asked God, Swami, why did I lose one eye? You have protected me. You saved my life.
Because you're falling, you're looking.
Swami said, the explanation that Swami gives was, you said, if the Vedas are true, then God will protect me. You gave an if then clause. That means you conditioned it with your limited intellect. You did not have complete faith.
Yeah.
You should have said, the Vedas are true, God will protect me.
Yeah.
Then nothing would go wrong. I will take care of you. That's the difference. Swami was talking about Yama and Nachiketa, the
Yeah.
degree of feeling that Nachiketa had. So
Wow.
going back into this concept, wherein we are very, very categorical about in this world, we talk about good and bad, right and wrong, black and white, darkness and light. There is no such thing as black and white. Even in Vedanta, it is clearly mentioned there is no such thing as black and white because every individual has got his own path towards God. End of the day, everybody is born to realize who you are born so that you don't have to be born again. Okay, let's come to that samam bonam. I want to bring that concept here because before we proceed further, this fundamental thing has to be in our brain, as Swami repeatedly kept on telling us. See, you are born so that you don't have to be born again. What is the purpose of life? To realize who you are. How many beautiful times in so many different conversations, starting from Samuel Sandwich, Kasturi Garu, everywhere you hear this line coming. And we continuously keep asking ourselves what to do, what to do, what to come on here. Take the systems approach. Why, what, where, when, who, everything has been defined for you. How
Here,
Swami has
here I
told.
want to bring in another flavor to it.
Ji bhai.
While we are discussing about these concepts, and there's a natural tendency for everybody to look at the lives of avatar
Hmm.
and then start analyzing them,
Hmm.
because Bhagwan says, "My life is my message."
Hmm.
Only Bhagwan could say that. Not even Krishna said that statement.
Hmm.
And it's a very profound statement. And when people look at it, then there is obviously a certain kind of a confusion which comes in, because
Hmm.
we try to understand good and bad from avataric perspective also. So,
Hmm.
like Sister Nupur here has asked a question: in Mahabharata war, Krishna's role, which under which it can come, Sukarma, Vikarma, or Akarma?
He's beyond all three.
Beyond karma.
Didi, I mean, with humble respect, I would like to submit over here. When we are referring to Purna avatars and divinity in personified in human form, we are not in a position to analyze. I would like to quote Bhagwan here. I know this is a fundamental question that many people will keep asking, but I would like to quote Bhagwan here. Swami told our former controller of examinations when he was literally in bliss, trying to. He was blessed to be the translator of Bhagwan's discourses, and after one such discourse, he was with Swami, and he said, "Swami, you are yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. You are beyond the word and ken of mind." He was so much in bliss. And then Swami translated it into simple English, in simple Telugu, and told him, I will translate into English also, but the Telugu words are important. నన్ను అర్థం చేసుకునే ప్రయత్నం చెయ్యవద్దు, అనుభవించు, ఆనందించు. In English it means, do not try to even understand me. నన్ను అర్థం చేసుకునే ప్రయత్నం చెయ్యవద్దు. It's a command. Do not try to understand me. అనుభవించు, ఆనందించు. Enjoy and be in bliss. So my humble suggestion, when we talk about Avatara Purushas, when we talk about Lord, when he comes on in human form, we just take it at face.
See,
Sairam.
this is here I would just like to highlight one more thing. All these concepts, when we are talking about, as Arvind brother mentioned, that it is an ascending process. It
Yes.
is from a human to divine. And while ascending, we go through this journey, and we put terminologies and concepts for our benefit to understand where we are and how we have to proceed forward. But when it is a descent issue,
Yeah.
the avatar coming down, then these laws don't work on
Don't
them.
apply.
Absolutely.
Why? It works because he chooses to accept them. That is different story. So you can find the avatar at every stage of life. You can see him interact with a kindergarten kid with perfection, and you can see him interact with an evolved sage in a perfection, because you
Totally.
can't say he was in sukarma or akarma stage, because he can go into akarma, he can go into vikarma, he can go into sukarma,
Mm.
because in all three, the people who are hanging there, they are all his devotees, his lovers.
That's
So
it.
he has to come down to every level. So he has to become akarma sometimes to instigate or encourage people from that slumber. Like I remember Bhagwan once very beautifully, he said, somebody mentioned that so many people are criticizing, uh, they are bad publicity and all that. And Bhagwan very beautifully, he very quietly said, people who are in habit of drinking, drugs, those who have never thought of God, they also need liberation. No? They also need to be helped.
Kya baat
So
hai.
it was like
Beautiful.
an eye opener. They need to be helped. Then what? He said,
Hmm.
how will they talk about God? So they start from criticizing God.
Wow.
Kamsa Bhakti.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Isn't it
There are
beautiful?
Beautiful.
That
fantastic.
for people who are in that slumber,
Hmm.
if they need to be shaken up, see, we
Hmm.
feel holier than thou, that how can I go down to that level? Oh, I should not go into bars. But
Hmm.
look at God. For him,
Hmm.
everybody is his child, and he says they also need to come.
Hmm.
So when can they start the journey? So
Yeah.
probably in the beginning of the journey, he's like an dissatisfied child who is fighting with his mother, or who is scolding his mother, or is abusing his parents.
Hmm.
It's okay. At least the journey has started. Even
Hmm.
if he's cursing, he's now using God's name in his lip. So imagine where the ascend order of thought is. Sorry, ascend order, and where is the descend order? So, from an ascending point of view, if we start interpreting the descent thought, it's going to be chaotic.
I
So
will just
that is
like
why
to
I
add.
feel that is where when Arvind said that, when Bhagwan has made very clear that don't understand me, just enjoy me. Because it's
True.
very difficult. How can a drop understand ocean?
True, brother.
Once you
Beautifully
merge,
put.
there is nothing to
Yes.
explain. You become
Yeah.
part of the ocean. So as long as you're a drop, you cannot explain. And
True.
once you merge, there's nothing to explain.
Yeah.
So I
I'll
think
just give
yes,
one
yes,
one small thought, because when the beauty of drop in the ocean, and before drop in the ocean, the concept of how the drop understands its role before it becomes an ocean. That the drop is actually part of the ocean. As you said, it is an for humans, for the Jivatma, it is a process of ascension. And for the Paramatma comes down to pull the Jivatma up. So there is no descent when in the ultimate sense of the term. One of the wardens asked Bhagwan this question: Swami, we are finding it very tough as wardens to control all the boys, Swami. And with you, somehow, you are able to manage everybody, Swami. How do you do all this? Like it was one of the questions that they asked Bhagwan. And then Swami said, ఒక చిన్న కథ చెప్తాను. I will tell you one small instance. Typically, as Swami says, I'll tell you one small story. Uh, all of us know the geography of Prashanti Mandir, and those of us who don't know the geography, I mean, I know everybody in this August audience will obviously know the geography of Prashanti Mandir. Before Cyclevant Hall came up, there was the sands, and Prashanti Mandir was in the center. And there was a slope, a gentle slope from the gent side and the gentle slope on the ladies' side. It was a slope. And in between, there were some steps on which boys used to sit. Now, there is this slope area where boys usually sit who are like, I don't know, let me put it this way. Sometimes when you want to avoid Swami, or you've done something wrong and you're not able to look at your own eyes in the mirror, you have something pricking, you sit on the slope. So it is sort of inaccessible kind of position. So they will sit there. There were three boys who were sitting. Swami was telling the story. Akkada chudu, see there were three boys who were sitting there. Now, one of them is a very naughty boy. Okay, one of them is a very good boy, and one of them is in between. Now, if I leave all three of them together, that naughty boy might poison the mind of the other two boys also. Because that's very much going to be possible. So what I do, literally Swami was telling this to the warden. I don't want to take the name of the warden. He was blessed to receive this direct guidance. Swami told him, I will give attention to one boy. I will avoid one boy, and I will berate the third one. Sakarma, Vikarma, Akarma. One shot. I will appreciate, I will speak very nicely, sweetly to one boy. So karma, so to speak. I will avoid one boy. Akarma, I won't even look at him. And the third guy, I will castigate, I will fire, I will berate. What will happen over a period of time? They will break up. So the boy who is getting attention from Swami will come closer and closer. He will leave the slope, he'll come onto the steps. From the steps, he'll come onto the portico. He will come to a different level. The boy who is being castigated again has got a choice. He will again separate himself. Why Swami only firing me, so I don't want it. That's one way of doing it. The second is introspection. Now, why is Swami firing me? Maybe I should do something good about myself. That is the second way of looking at it, the concept of choice. And the boy whom Swami is totally avoiding, again, question of choice. He or she can choose how to respond to it. So when you talk about action by the avatar, with just one perspective, he can give Sakarma, Vikarma, and Akarma. But all three are only to benefit that particular individual. I'll go back. I want to make one statement here before we proceed further. It's a lovely thought that is coming to me, I think, Swami's grace. In one discourse, Swami clearly said, Edi jarigina Swami prasadame. Whatever happens is Swami's prasadam. Manchi jarigina Swami prasadame. If good happens, it is Swami's prasadam. Chadu jarigina Swami prasadame. If bad happens, it is also Swami's prasadam. Manchi chadu meeku kani. Good and bad are for you. Swami meeku eppudu manche chestaru. God will always do good for you.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So with reference to God, there is no Sakarma, Vikarma, Karma. He is Kalatita. He is Nishkala, Niranjana, Alak Niranjana. It is we, as Abhimanyu brother put, in our ascent, we give different terminologies to all this so that our limited minds can sort of begin to even touch the fringes of what divinity is all about. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to touch on these points today. Thank you,
Beautiful.
Bhai. Thank you so
Let
much.
me bring in now a shloka which is very popular, which is I think one of the popular shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, which is quoted very often, but relevant to our topic here. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. I think this actually summarizes the whole essence of action, of one, how one should conduct, how our action should be oriented.
Hmm.
And let me give it a literal meaning and then I'll leave the floor open to both of you. So, karmanye vadhika raste ma phaleshu kadachana. It literally means that action is in your hands, is your prerogative, but fruit of action is not in your hand. Hence, don't focus on it, focus on karma. So, how do you look at it, Jagdish? Let us start. How do you
Yeah.
understand this shloka?
We can understand it from a very physical parlance. We live in a world wherein we evaluate action by results. Means what nobody really looks at how much inner transformation it has caused, how much they have crept into our heart, but what is the physicality of the results that have been produced by the action. More often than not, karmanye vadikaraste has a very one-sided approach in a way that, okay, you should not engage in action with a greed for the results. Greed is the predominant, means your focus should not be, okay, I am going to get that fantastic result, so let me do it. That is one aspect. The other aspect is also that if the ends are not very appealing, means we have to do something which I really don't like, probably mopping the floor, sweeping the floor. I don't like to do it a lot. How do I do it? Anyhow, I don't like it. I'll do, okay, something kuch to karna hai, just to take the broom and sweep something. Both are actions, and in both these, we are being driven by the results. If the result is extremely pleasing to us, we get extremely motivated by the result. And if the result is not very pleasing to us also, we get demotivated, and in both the cases, the quality gets compromised. So ultimately, yoga karma su kaushala means basically it's a quality check in some sense, that you are the quality of the action that you're performing should be pristine, and that shows your adept nature at work. So karmanya vadikaraste in that sense tells whether the end is good or bad, pleasing or not pleasing, whatever it is, just don't focus on it. Enjoy the activity or focus only on the action. So that is my
I
understanding.
appreciate this thought because people usually have this misconstrued that this shloka or this connotation is that don't have focus on goal.
Cool.
Don't have goal.
Yeah.
Actually, goal is not to be avoided. One must have goal.
Yes.
But the attachment to the goal,
Exactly.
or what did he use the term, that greed for the goal or whatever,
Greed.
that is the problem of that. So ma phaleshu kadachana is not that don't have phal. It is not na phaleshu kadachana.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's not to
Don't
have.
anticipate.
Yeah.
See, that's the beauty of it is ma phaleshu kadachana. Don't anticipate
Anticipate.
the fruit.
Yeah.
You have right. See, karmanya eva adhikaraste. Only on action
Action.
you have right. Ma phaleshu kadachana. At any point in time, kadachana, at any point in time, you do not anticipate the result. In Telugu, it says, Yatna Paretna Manava Dharmamu Jaya Pajayamul Daivadinam.
Daivadinam.
All actions are in the ambit of human beings. Victory or loss is in the hand of God. Swami has
God.
put this in that song also. Satya Dharmamu Shanti Premalato song which Swami keeps singing.
Right.
So, if you look at this shlok, this line of that shlok, there are 3 lines after that, 3 lines after that. The first line, Karmanya Vadikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana. Ma Karma Phala Heturbu Mate Swangos Tvakarmani. You add to that, you reach a level, Mate Sangos Tvakarmani. When you want Tva Akarmani, you have to reach a level of non action, not inaction, non action.
Non-action.
That's the whole shloka. So performing action, yes, target based approach are important, goal setting is important. Even in spiritual, you have to be smart. SMART. You can expand on the smart goals even in the spiritual parlance also. They have to be specific, they have to be measurable, they have to be achievable, they have to be realistic, and they have to be time bound, because you have only one birth. Remember, only one birth. In this birth, if you know where you are supposed to go and you still don't go, again, it's a choice. You are wasting time. Time waste is life waste. So there you go into akarma, and akarma is going to give you a bad result. So karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Here it means set a goal, perform your duty, perform your action, perform your karma. I used the word duty here. We can add duty, responsibility, and so many other synonyms to the word karma over here. We can keep defining them also in the future discussions. It will be very, very useful. But point is this: if you look at it from a spiritual point of view, there you have to perform every action as an offering to God. Bluntly putting it, from a material standpoint, from where we are right now, do your duty. As Swami used to tell 12th standard boys when they were preparing for their exams, I want to share this. It's a very practical siddhantam which Swami used to give the boys, 12th standard boys. Used to come and say, right, pen, pencil, rubber, ruler, sharpener, unnaya mi degara. Do you have all these with you? Pen, pencil, beautiful acronym. Pen, pencil, rubber, ruler, sharpener. Do you have all this? Then yes, Swami. Are you preparing? Yes, Swami. How do you think you'll do in the exams? You'll do very well, Swami. That's the catch 22. You cannot say you'll do very well. Swami will smile and say, Niketla telsu. How do you know? Blink. He'll catch you there. And then Swami says, result and the result does not come later. The result is there even as you are writing the exam. The result is there even as you are writing the exam. It is not, does not come later. So performing the exam, writing the exam properly is important. To write the exam properly, you need to prepare properly. See how Swami connects everything. So to write, to do a good action, your thought must be in the right action, in the right mode, in the right perspective. To perform well, your thought should be in the right perspective. That's why Swami says, expect the worst, do your best, leave the rest. This is what Swami told 12th standard boys on the portico during those wonderful days when we used to surround Swami and Swami would stand there. So expect the worst. That means look at the worst case scenarios in every action. Do your best. Okay? Leave the rest. I will just add one small anecdote here when Swami was talking about it. This will cover a couple of questions that are there in the commentary box also without directly referring to the questions. Do your best. Okay, definition of do your best over here. That means for that kala, karana, kartavya, samaya, sandarbha, and desha, kala, paristiti, within these 8 parameters, what is the best that you can do? There was a boy, this actually happened in our 12th standard group again. I was Swami's grace, we were witness to all these wonderful things. Beautiful. These boys were sitting there. There was a topper, consecutive, continuous, consistent topper. You're sitting there, and all of us know boys who usually are toppers and all that, they sit in front, and the second level guys, we are thoda tension may will sit little towards the back because whatever. Swami looked at this topper boy and says, no, fail ra. This is before the exams, huh? Remember this, huh? Just before the exams are starting. Swami looks at this boy and says, "You fail, ra." And in second or third row, there is a boy who is sitting. Swami looks at him and says, "No, 100% topper, topper." And, this guy is blinking. Even the teachers are blinking because this boy consistently a topper, always in the 99th percentile. And how can this boy be a failure? And how can that boy be a success? That boy was hardly getting 60, 70 bechara benchmark, almost borderline. He used to be getting the first class. That's all. Exams are over. Results come.
Is he frozen?
I think he froze.
Uh-uh.
Okay. That's okay. In the meantime, let us continue this. Jagdish, there is another question which has come in, which is a very natural question. I think there's a brother called Nerves of Steel. I don't know his real name. And he's saying, if you don't have the focus on the output, if you do not, if you want to delete the, the chase for the output, how do you get motivated?
Yeah.
The attitude of don't care for the, that's what he's used the term, don't care about the result, then how do you remain motivated? I think it's a very common concern which many of people share.
Yeah.
How would you guide that?
I will just first humbly pray that this is not coming from a holier than thou kind of an approach. I'm just trying to put that in my life first as well. But with that humble prayer to Swami, and based on what little we have learned at his Lotus Street, I will try to probably share my views on that. Having a goal is different from having expectations from the goal. They both are totally different. You set a goal. I want to achieve this particular target. For example, I want to get 100 in the mathematics exam or a physics exam or whatever it is, and I work towards that goal. Because if I don't set that as a target, there is nothing for me to get motivated. Getting motivated is not wrong, but getting demotivated after not getting 100 is what Karmanyavadikaraste talks about. That then when you're literally crestfallen and you say that, oh, there's nothing in the world left for me. No, that's not. The whole point is you should have a goal. Everyone sets a target. We should set a target and you should work for it. That is the inspiration behind all the work. But after having done all the hard work, when the result comes, that is the point. Are we able to maintain our equanimity? Having said that, there is a very thin line that separates equanimous behavior from an absolute lunatic. Means, or let me say, not lunatic. I would say a person who has a no care attitude. I don't care. Okay, jo karna tha kar diya. I did this much. This is what I wanted to do, and now I'm not bothering. That is again a wrong philosophy. You do it. You introspect. Oh, these are the places I made a mistake. Next time I'll do better. But that's about it. Trying not to be dejected or getting too elated, both are equally important. And sometimes this is the prayer that I had, Abhi brother, if I can take 2 minutes here,
Sure.
to Swami in Chennai, and asked him the meaning of surrender, what surrender is. And Swami gave this answer: at every point in time in life, if you can convince yourself, or if you can say to yourself that whatever is happening is good for me, that means you have surrendered. So in some sense, the whole thing gets revolved and it comes, okay, I put all the effort, I got motivated, I set a target of 100, I got motivated by 100, I studied day and night, I put all that effort, and in the end, there are two scenarios. I can get a 60 or I can get 100. The outcome or the reaction to both of them is what Karmanyavadikaraste's focus is on. That do I say?
Arvind,
Yeah.
I will tell you, I'm from a sales background professionally, and fortunately for me, got a good training also in sales line, and I used to train myself people. In a sales hierarchy, when you go into the higher sales of the elite items, you will be surprised to note that the final training which the best salesmen get, you know what it is?
Uh-huh.
Of not to sell.
Wow.
A salesman is taught not to sell. How not to sell? To sell. If you go with an attitude to sell, you become like an aggressive salesman, and that class of people don't like it. They feel like too much choking, like, oh, you're coming on too much, too strong to me. So how do you remain in that way that you are selling, but you're not selling? Because you are now doing something more than sales.
Beautiful.
And that is where the whole concept of sale converges.
Yeah.
When you learn the art of selling without selling. There is
Very
another very
beautiful.
beautiful research for an Olympic 100-meter sprinters. Long back, I had heard an interview of a sprinter from Olympics who shared us that the final training which they get of in running, that 100-meter sprint, which finishes in less than 10 seconds, I was pleasantly surprised. They teach them thoughtlessness. They teach them meditation while running. So he says that is the only difference which differentiates a second's difference of who touches the line first.
Wow.
If while running you can go in the sink of running and you forget winning or losing and you become blank, and if you can maintain that rhythm, you you have done it. So if you really look at it from this karmanyavadika raste, it may sound a little impractical at the lower level,
Yeah.
because people don't have that vision to understand that how can, like brother asked very sweetly, that Yash Dubey is his name now. He says that, how do I get motivated if I don't know it? Actually, the motivation level may start with looking at a goal, but holding on to that goal or getting possessed by that goal will actually demotivate you. So the
Yes.
goal can be a trigger for you to start the journey. But ultimately, one has to find different motivation levels. And in my
Absolutely.
theory of motivation, we see that, the goal is only the starting point, and then there are appreciations and actualizations and purpose of life, which becomes a higher goals, which motivate you. So you move from that. So this karmanya vadika raste can give birth to so many beautiful thoughts to understand like how this journey goes. But this was fantastic for me to learn that how even in sales we teach them not to sell.
Not to sell.
Even in
Beautiful.
running we made them forget how to run, what why to run, just run. As if
Absolutely.
you the dancer and the dance becomes one.
Absolutely.
There's nobody dancing. The dance
True.
and the dancer, there's no differentiation, and
Absolutely.
that is the finale of the life. So that is what karmanya vadhikaraste is there.
Absolutely. Very beautifully put, brother. And just to add one thought, this is what I feel many a times. The process of evolution is about letting go. The whole process of evolution that we are talking about is just about letting go of a lot of things. The goals, the targets, everything actually we are supposed to let go of. All that remains with us is action. And when that action is done devoid of all these expectation and goals, that becomes meditation. Probably that is what it is. See, if I'm acting
Fantastic.
without without any thought of the consequences, not in the negative way, but without putting too much focus on consequences or anything, I'm just purely enjoying the acting. That's what Sachin Tendulkar very beautifully says, being in the zone. When he says when he's in the zone, when he's batting, he just knows how to hit the ball. Means everything else disappears. He just knows even before the bowler bowls, he knows where it will come and how he has to hit it. How does that happen? Nobody knows. It's just probably somewhat similar to how this particular thing is. It's very
Beautiful.
difficult to explain. It's just probably fun, something to be experienced for each one of us in our life sessions.
See, you mentioned about surrender, and I think it's an important point to discuss a little bit more. I hope Arvind can rejoin us.
Mhm.
Surrender, there is a trap also, but let us talk about this point, because when we say don't attach yourselves to goal, the connotation refers to like surrender it to God, offer it to God, your consequences, and just focus on action. So there is a level of different surrender now we are talking about. How do we look at surrender in this context when there is a kind of what should I say, a escape route which people really find? They say that I am doing it and offering it to Swami. So
Yes.
it is like if somebody has to blame him because I did my best. God did not do his job, kind of. What do you say about that?
This is a very interesting question, brother. And the precursor of this word called surrender is very important. Whom do we surrender to, and why do we surrender to him? Because we love him. And this is what Swami used to tell time and again. This is a similar question asked in Sandeha Nivarani, if I'm not wrong. That if that is the intention, or that is the kind of work that we do, and good and bad, if it can be offered, it becomes an escapist philosophy at some level, that I can do whatever I want and I can escape because I'll blame it on God. But Swami said, if you really love the one whom you have surrendered to, you will never be willing to give him anything but the best. You will constantly strive to give him the best continuously and constantly, and that leads to our own refinement at the end of the day. And even otherwise, for example, as slowly that process is improving, my action gets refined, my action gets better, and slowly it takes me to that next level wherein I am forgetting, or I'm oblivious to what action I'm performing. I'm just engrossed, or what result it might get, I'm engrossed only in the action. And that is when I can really say that I have surrendered. Else, as long as I think and I know that I'm surrendering, actually I am not surrendering. Like it's like the question somebody asked, Swami asked, how many minutes do you meditate each one? So one boy said, Swami, 20 minutes. Swami said, how do you know you meditate for 20 minutes? Because the moment you say I meditate, you just are not aware of anything at all. So if you are not aware, how will you know? How did you have that conscious? I mean, how will you aware in that way? So it's tricky in that parlance, that that process of love, surrender, and action. I love somebody so much that I cannot offer him anything which is below standard. I constantly strive to improve it over a period of time. That striving to improve becomes my focus and not the result of the action. And probably that is what Karmanyavadhikarasте means, because I don't want to offer anything less to my Lord. That's the spirit.
Beautiful. Okay, I think Arvind is back.
I'm
Oh,
really
I will just
sorry. A transformer burst outside,
No, no
so
problem.
power went for a
No problem,
6.
Arvind.
So
Actually, if you
sincere
want to,
apologies.
Arvind, we have already moved on to, we are discussing about surrender, but I thought
Yes,
your
I'll just
story can
finish
be
that.
completed.
yes.
I'll
If you
just
can
finish that.
complete the
Yes.
story. Yes.
Yeah, before Swami sends me another message. Okay, so the point was the results came. The 12th standard exams were over. The results came, and the boy who was anticipated as the topper, he got 98 out of 100. Topper in the class, topper in that particular year, he was a topper. And then the boy whom, and this boy Swami said he is a failure. Okay, remember that. And the other boy who was a mediocre guy, papa average, slightly above average student, he managed to get 85 out of 100, 85%. This boy was 98%. And then the teachers go to Swami, and sweetly, in order to not to embarrass the boy, Swami calls the teachers inside the interview room, and the teachers ask Swami, Swami, this boy got 98%. Swami, you said he is a failure. This boy got, he's an average student and he got only 85. Swami, please can you explain this magic? I don't want to take the name of the teacher. He's very well known to all of us. And Swami sweetly told, see, the boy who got 98% was capable of getting 100. He was capable of getting 100. He did not put in that complete effort. That's why he got 98, and that is why, in my eyes, he's a failure. The boy who got 85% was capable of only getting 75, 76. Still, he struggled and he got 85%. That is why, in my eyes, he is number one.
Wow.
So, the beauty of this, I wanted to end that thought with this, do your best, expect the worst, do your best, leave the rest. Karmanyavadhikarasте.
Beautiful.
So, if you're capable of doing 100%, do your 100%. Do not compromise on that. If you
See, the
compromise, you go
problem,
into
very
akarma
good.
vikarma.
The problem is that when we start comparing ourselves with others, all these confusions arise.
True.
And, I have never seen in my whole life with Bhagwan him comparing any one of us to anybody else. I've never seen him tell, you didn't do well, look how is he doing. I have never seen him, even though he has dealt with hundreds of students in his presence, but he has never made a comparison with one boy to another boy. He
Yes,
would only compare you with yourself.
exactly.
And that is a
Beautiful.
wonderful parenting lesson if anyone can pick
Yes,
up. If
yes,
anybody wants to be a good parent, should never compare his one child with another child. It is
yes.
such a unique lesson with Bhagwan, and how he will prompt you to rise. Like Arvind, you said about this example. I know we were in commerce.
Hmm,
Today, commerce boys get 100, which is unimaginable, unthinkable in our times. Okay. If we could get
hmm,
70, we used to celebrate. And our teachers would tell us that, you cannot get 10 out of 10. It is theory. So
hmm,
it was like a blind thing that if you get 7 means you're done extremely well. So most
hmm,
of us were hanging between 5.5 to 6. It was a normal averaging. So we could
hmm,
never get more than 65% marks.
hmm,
And Bhagwan's expectation was always 80 plus. So when the examination results would come out, we'll be sitting at the last row, we'll not be in the front because we can't face him with 65% marks. But in that time also, he would come. He asked one day, he said, how much did you get? And he was showing off to his, all the guests who were sitting there. And he expects people to say 90 and all that. And here I whispered to him, Swami, 65. And Swami looked at me like, and then he turned towards the guest and he said, this boy, he's in commerce. He got first grade, but he's good in drama, he's good in gymnastics, he's good in sports. He listed out few things and said, Kurcho. And then he looked at me and said, Kurchura? Like he said, to me on personal level, it was like, shut up and sit down. But to others, he just patched it up. But, that's what I think, he is such a wonderful parenting lesson it is that, people can pick up this from Bhagwan. That is amazing.
Yes.
So thank you, Arvind, for the story. And that, so we were, Arvind, taking the journey into surrender.
Yes.
And we are discussing about how do we define this surrender in this context of action. There is another question which brother had asked here, and I would just like to read it out and see if you can help him. Can we surrender our work to God even if we have made mistakes? Won't that be hypocrisy? Saying to God, you take care of everything, but I fail to play my role. That is a
The
very
point
sweet
is,
question, actually.
yes, it is a very genuine question, and many people have that. Even students have the same problem. And Swami said, "Sarvakarma Bhagavad Prityardham." We all know that we do certain things which, as Jagdish brother very sweetly said, that may not please Swami. In certain levels, we all nimitta matra. We are all bumps and jumps. So then that question was asked by one of our brothers during one of our drama interviews. We were blessed to be part of the drama group. JC brother knows, even by you were also part of so many dramas probably. Swami blessed us with this statement. This boy asked, Swami, how is it, Swami? Because when you say offer everything to you, Swami, we do certain things that we cannot offer to you, Swami. In that the typical way in the interview room, you can take that freedom with Swami. And Swami sweetly said, start. Cheyandi. You start with offering all actions to me, and then slowly you will understand. You will understand that all actions that you are doing, you cannot offer it to me.
Exactly.
So, if you want to please Swami, if you want to make Swami happy, you will ensure that you will only do those
The right
actions that
actions.
will make Swami happy.
Beautiful.
Swami so sweetly told. Nothing happens on day one. He is also such a patient God. I'm telling you, such a patient God. Start. Start offering everything to me. Yadannat kurutet papam tadannat pratimuchyate. Yadratriyat kurutet papam tadratriyat pratimuchyate. God, please let every action that I perform during the day, let the consequences of that be decimated in that day itself. Let whatever I do in night.
I don't know, it may not be so appropriate in that manner, but there is a very live and real example. There was one person who had a drinking habit, and he heard the same statement and he had a chance to ask Swami. And he was in the thought that, okay, Swami, I'm going to offer you the same thing. So what he started making two pegs. Each time he will make a glass, he'll put a second glass for Swami, and he would have both. So he said, well, Swami said, share everything to me, and I am sharing with him. And it so happened that after a month, he stopped drinking. And the people asked him, like, what happened? He said, I was doing that. And then suddenly something happened in me. I said, what the hell am I doing? What am I doing? And slowly, things changed. And before he would have like maybe 2 or 3 glasses, he started having one, and then that one also disappeared and he was gone. But the beauty which I found was Swami telling him, share everything with me.
Yeah.
If you have this
Exactly.
bad habit, share it with me. No problem. I will take care of it.
In a
And then
public
it
discourse,
comes to a
Swami
point
said,
like what brother was raising that, if it is in the past, I can only just think of one statement of Bhagavan. He would always say, today you have realized, and that is important.
Yeah.
Past is past, forget it. Start from now.
Beautiful.
See, only Avatar can say that statement with such an authenticity that past is past, live from now. So if you have realized it today, then that's it. That's the starting point of your life. So you don't have to worry about what you did in the past. Accept it and move on.
Yeah.
So I think there's a very beautiful connotation. But yes, Arvind, we were talking, Jagdish was talking about the trap which we get into this surrender business. We tend
Jagdish,
to
continue,
have
continue. Let me get the
that
thread from you.
convenient, what we call it a convenient philosophy,
Hmm.
in which we, what we can't handle, we try to offer, or
Hmm.
we say that I have done my bit,
Hmm.
Swami, now you take care.
Hmm.
How do you look at it? To me, that is not even surrender, but at least that is the starting point of that. So
Agreed.
we were opening the floor there. So
Yeah.
See, point is here. Even Swami says when but in the initial stages when I talked about karma to karma sannyasa, from karma you go to karma yoga. See, Bhagwan defines karma yoga. There are two words there: karma and yoga, action and union. Action that leads to union is karma yoga. And in one shloka in Bhagavad Gita, Swami clearly defines, stating that what is karma yoga? Performing every action conscious that you are not the doer is karma yoga.
Karma yoga.
Beautifully,
Beautiful.
Swami says, performing every action conscious that you are not the doer is karma yoga. So all of us are still in the state of karma only. We have not yet reached the level of total karma yoga, wherein every action that we are performing, Swami. I am not the doer, you are the doer. The bumps and jumps are all where there. The I keeps coming. But as Abhi brother said, there's always a beginning. And let me be honest, the moment you start, frankly, the same example, the thought that came into my mind which Swami made, you take one step towards me, I will take 100 towards you. The moment that gentleman started offering one peg to God and one peg for himself, and he says, okay, boss, I'm making you part of my enjoyment also, I'm offering to you, he took the first step, started sharing with God, so to speak. Jivatma is giving a deal to Paramatma over here. And then slowly Paramatma takes over and says, okay, fine, now you started walking towards me, now let me walk towards you, come on, I'll pull you towards me faster. See, that is the blessing that Bhagwan has given us. Let us not worry about the consequences. When will we reach the goal? When is it
Yeah.
going to happen? How is it going to? There are hundreds of slokas I can quote from Bhagavatam for you, but that is not going to cut any ice here. What is important in terms of surrender is this: surrender is an ultimate destination. It is the last part of, even if you look at it from the point of bhakti, Atmanivedanam is the last one. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishwasmaranam, Padasevanam, Vandanam, Archanam, Dasham, Sneham. Atmanivedanam comes right at the end. So to reach the
Arvind,
level of
Arvind is
surrender, you can't do that, boss. That, as you said, it is a process of evolution. If all of us can reach surrender and day one, no, my God, it is like Janaka climbing onto the horse, and that instant, in the presence of Ashtavakra, he gains his liberation, he gains mukti, he gains moksha, he gains realization. ऐसा नहीं होता है. There is a process. Yes, JC.
One small, this Ashtavakra thing when you told, something lit up here. And that is where karma, the whole, the what we discussed today, why it happens. And there is a beautiful thing. I had this doubt quite some time in my mind. How is it possible that while a man is getting onto his horse, he gets self-realization? Well, that is what happens with Janaka. When the guru whispers something in his ear, and he was actually getting on top of the horse, and as he was getting on, the guru whispers in his ear something, and by the time the other leg is in the saddle, or sorry, the hook where you place your leg, he self-realized. What did the guru whisper? Tattvam asi. I hear that billion times every day and nothing happens to me. And why is it that for him it happened in a short? This is the question. And then the answer, somebody, I was reading somewhere, he said, when you constantly dwell on something through lifetimes, why karma, the right actions, the right thoughts, right intention, why they are important is when you constantly engage in that, referencing becomes easy. So what happens at some, for example, a person who just has never stepped into Puttaparthi, you tell him something like the North Indian canteen kiosk. One who has never been into Puttaparthi, he will not know. But the person who has walked on those lands of Puttaparthi time and again inside Prashanti Nilayam, you tell him that kiosk near the North Indian, in one shot he can relate. So the analogy they gave was that soul of Janaka, in many lives, he walked that landscape of Prashantilim, the Tattvamasi landscape, the thoughts again and again. For him, all that was needed was an indicator, and he went there. But for those who are unaware of what is the landscape of Prashantinilium, no matter how much you give in latitudes and longitudes also, it is not going to make much of a difference. You will not be able to comprehend it. So
Absolutely.
this was one thing that I thought we'll share at this point in time. Yeah.
Brother,
Yes.
I think this discussion is really warming up and time is also up. So, keeping
Okay.
the respecting the time, I think we will stop it today here, but we will continue this journey of karma, which relates to surrender and going forward in our coming weeks. Hopefully, prayerfully, we pray to Bhagwan that he can keep blessing us with these beautiful occasions. And thank you both for joining and sharing lovely stories about Bhagwan and whatever we have learned. And I want to thank all the viewers here who have been so encouraging and participated with such lovely questions and thoughts. Thank you all
Yes.
very much. And we will please feel free to send us your thoughts, your questions, so that we can work it on that, and whatever little we can share, it will be our pleasure. So offering our gratitude to Bhagwan. Any final words before we close?
Samasta loka sukhino bhavantu.
The best
That's
karma from
true.
our side. Absolutely.
My prayer to Swami.
Thank you very much. Sai Ram, brothers. Sai Ram,
Sai Ram.
everybody.
Sairam, everyone.
Sai Ram.